to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
Welcome to Just Minding My Business. I hope your day was full of joy, love, and passion. Today, I am happy to bring to the mic Kesha Ajose-Fisher, whose essays and stories have been published in several online and print collections. She writes from her singular experiences. She was born in Chicago, raised in Nigeria, Texas, and California. Kesha makes her home in Portland, Oregon. She has worked as a counselor with disadvantaged youth and as an advocate for immigrants and refugees from Africa. Having seen varying degrees of struggles and triumphs, love and pain in her life and theirs, Kesha brings these realities to life in the bitter suffering of her characters and their seemingly inescapable predicaments. Well, welcome, Kesha. We are so happy to have you and eager to hear how all of this got started.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
And it's good to see you both.
So, how did you get on this journey?
As you mentioned before, I was raised in Nigeria. And I'll say, even with all the difficulties, my beautiful country faces, it's still one of the best places on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And sadly, we have this, thing that occurs with children who, when they're struggling or feeling any kind of pain, they're not allowed to share it, or it didn't feel to me, when I was a child living in Nigeria, that I could share any of my concerns. And the next best thing was to write it down. How many times have you heard someone say, oh, journaling is healthy. Journaling is a great way to process, your thoughts. And, I didn't have the words. And it used to be that I would draw things. And then when I got the words, I would write. And even then, I didn't share with people the things that occurred in my mind until we moved back to America, and I was in middle school, and we were asked to write a story. And I wrote a story, simple enough. But I remember as a teacher was reading it, just the looks on the students' faces. And it appeared to me that they were experiencing this story as I'd written it. And it was just a woman. It was a story about a woman walking through a garage looking for a car and hearing footsteps behind her. But somehow I'd been able to capture the fear in that woman, the terror, right? And in a moment like that just seemed to show up in everyone's faces. And then I ended the story, and at the end you could see the children just captivated. I was, 7th grade, I think, captivated by words that I put on paper. And I thought, if I could make people feel with words that I wrote out of this dark place in my head, and not to terrify people, but just to share and see them feeling or able to, expose their emotions just from hearing words, I thought, there is no better feeling than this. And then I really started writing.
Wow.
If that makes any sense, right?
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense, because you witnessed the faces and the people, how they reacted to, or responded, I should say, to what you wrote. Right. And that was confirmation for you that this was what you needed to be doing.
Yes. And, I don't know if it's happened in your world where, you've been told you will know when your passion comes to you. You'll feel it.
Yeah.
And, again, raised by a Nigerian father. My mother was African American. She went to Nigeria. They decided to raise us there. But there was still always that thing, all parents, we want our children to have, more successful lives than we do, that we want them to live a better life than we did. And, there's always that target of, be a lawyer or a doctor or, someone that's going to make a lot of money to be able to provide for yourself and your family. And I couldn't come out and say, oh, well, I want to tell stories. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I want to tell stories.
Oh.
And having been on this journey for quite a few years now, I know there's not a ton of money unless you are a name, unless Oprah calls your name, pulls you up, or let's say, fingers crossed, something like this happens. You get nominated to be a finalist in a well-regarded competition. Then you hope that, okay, maybe your word is getting out and something great could come from it. From your passion. And I don't think I could ever do this if it was the only way I could eat, right?
Oh, yeah.
I do it because of that feeling I get when I open my laptop and I have just the freedom of 2-3 hours to do nothing but just tell a story. And just being able to do that alone, the fulfillment from that, is unmatched as far as work goes. And what's the other side of it? They say if you do something you love for a living, you don't work another day in your life.
Exactly.
And, my goal is to do this, whether or not it provides income for me. I know that I'll never not be in front of a computer. And if the lights go out, I will have a pencil and a piece of paper telling whatever stories crawl into my head. And that's how I know that it's my passion.
Absolutely. And it sounds like, to me, we can feel it.
Yeah.
Just in your conversation. And before we went on air, share with our audience some of the amazing things that is happening as a result of your writing.
Oh, absolutely. I tend to write about difficult topics. Again, just based on my upbringing, where I never felt comfortable, sharing that I was sad, or sharing that I was scared of something, or sharing that it really broke my heart when my parents split. I could never voice that to another person. But as I said before, I could write about it. And when I decided to start showing my work, then you get people who say to you, oh, it's so good, you should submit it and, get published and these great things will happen for you. And that never crossed my mind, right? It was just, I just want to write. I just want to tell stories. This is a safe space for me. And when I gained the confidence to show it to people who actually, wanted to see that voice that I'd, given to myself, that I'd been able to grow out of this silent place, it felt to me like I had the responsibility, to share not only the words that I'm throwing together, but I had the responsibility to show someone else that if you're feeling any of these things, you having lost a parent or lost a friend or moved, as I did, all the way from Africa to America, not knowing when I would see the only home I'd ever known again, and you didn't have a place to put that pain, here is a way to do it. And when I started getting the kind of response where it felt like people were feeling it, right? I thought, okay, I trust you. I'll put it out there. I'll put the work out there. And then when I was published in a literary magazine at the community college I was attending at the time, I thought, oh, they're just placating me. They're just being nice, and so then the next year would come around, I'd submit again, and then it'd get published. And I thought, what is happening? Do these people really like, hearing these stories about, and I'll tell you, listen, I am an African-American woman. I tell African women stories because that's what I know. I can't tell a story about my little dog here because I don't know what it's like to exist in a world as he does. And so I tell the stories that matter to me. And if somewhere in your body, in your heart, and your soul, you are able to feel what my experience is like, or what women who look like me have experienced on this planet, then welcome, please join us, because there is no more room for silence is my message. I won't keep silent about the horror that a lot of my sisters are experiencing, right now, through poverty, through domestic violence, through birthing child after child after child, losing children and not knowing where to place that pain. I know that these are heavy topics, but can you imagine, if it's so hard to hear it, how much of a burden it is to carry it around? And, I thought, listen, if this is the message that I'm meant to bring into the world, then I accept.
Oh my goodness, you said such a mouthful in so many ways. Thank you, Kesha, for being here.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have the privilege of knowing many Nigerian women and have heard their stories.
Yeah.
And, from being a second wife, and having children and being slapped by the first wife. All kinds of stories. And sometimes I wonder the same thing. How do you live through something like that and still find the ability to reach out and grasp hold of your own humanity? And yet I have found this with so many of them, that immensely strong women, immensely, but they're strong because they have learned how to endure pain and move through it. And as a result, they bring so much to the table for other women.
Yes.
So I've learned a lot from them. I've learned a lot. Let me ask you, what part of Nigeria are you, or was your father from?
Dad was from Badagry, but we were raised in Lagos. So bustling Lagos, busy, bodies on every block from end to end, right? Yeah. The sun beating down on it's hot. I mean, like I said, all of that is beautiful to me. Whenever I've traveled back and, returned with with Americans who've never experienced it, I get the same thing. Oh, it's so hot here. It's, there's so many people here. What is that smell? And all the while I'm thinking I am home and this feels good to me. And I get to just, if I could pull my hair down, I would. There's nothing quite as peaceful to me as when I step foot in Lagos.
I say that so often. Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's busy.
Oh yeah.
It's so 1,000% alive.
Yes.
But everyone who goes, I always notice when they've gone home for a while. Yes. They come back refreshed. They look different.
Yes.
Their skin is glowing. They're glowing.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear you say that.
Oh,
because it is
that's
true.
My passion is someday to actually get to go to Nigeria.
Yes. Oh, I always say, I even put it in my writing. I say everyone should go at least once. And, my mom was, as I said, she was born and raised in Chicago, the first in her family to go back to Africa since the slave trade. So, she had a heavy load to carry. She had to go be the face that, honestly, in the 70s, the first American that most people had ever seen. She had to, and then she was only 18 years old. And so, I always say, her story is incredible. I mean, she'll be the topic of my next novel, but she did it, having never seen a picture of Nigeria, having never really left Chicago. My dad had come to Chicago to go to college, and she met this man, 10 years older, of course, stunning man, and well-spoken, carried himself well. And, and their story, definitely needs to be told, because these people, against all odds, should not have been together. He is an educated man, had come all the way to America to get his master's degree, and she was a young girl on the south side of Chicago with 2 children, mind you, by 18. And this man said, "I love you so much," because she was, let me tell you, walks into a room, a breath taker. So I got the attraction, but she was also loving and present in her existence, no matter how little the world might have thought of her, if that makes sense. And they said, let's have 2 more children and go raise them in Africa. And we lived there. And my mom, by the time she came back to America in, late 80s, 90s, 1990, she didn't speak our language. But if she were sitting in a room and the children, all 4 of us actually don't speak English to each other. We only speak Yoruba to each other. And obviously I speak English fine. But over the years, and my dad, he wanted us to speak English around her so she didn't feel left out. Except what happened with this incredible woman is she was never able to, translate the words with her mouth, but she could sit in a room and listen to conversation in our language and understand every word. Wow. If that's not genius, I don't know what is. And, and my sister and I, when we're mad at her, we'll sit and talk about her, and she will come in, knock stuff off the table. She's like, "I know what you're talking about," but again, being the first in our family to go back, the expectation was high. My dad showing up with this American woman in the late 70s, there were expectations that he had too. And she had a mother-in-law to go to, and sisters-in-laws. And dad,
I know that story.
Right. You don't even have to see my face to understand.
Yes,
And of course, with my father standing in the world, of course he was, highly regarded by many women, and in the culture, he was going to be well sought after. So then there's this, again, added burden. She's young. She already has 2 children. She's got 4 children by the time she's 21. So, can you imagine carrying that much on you while you're still growing? She's a child still, and having to then, fend off women and protect her marriage and stand against a world that's so hard that, I'm sad enough to say, she ended up being broken by the end of it. But I always say, no one ends up that broken if the world hadn't been such a difficult, hard place to be in. Right. And so, and us trying to understand her plight in the world, it made sense that, we saw her, I'm ranting here, but her story is incredible. I think, African Americans in America, if I could wave a wand and give everyone one single experience in their lifetime here, it would be go to any part of Africa where you feel safe, where you can connect with people. Nigerians are so welcoming, and they always want to feed you. Number one,
yes,
you come in, please sit down, eat.
For sure.
You could have just eaten. You get home, like, sit down, eat, please. Okay, just that joy and excitement to just be existing is present, and you feel it. And, you know, and that's really what I want to share is my experience in the years I spent in Africa, and my experience in my years in the States, where, of course, I ended up working with immigrants and refugees from Africa because that's where the world wanted me to be. And, you know,
Wow.
there's no, I don't know. There's no magic that I could do, but as you said, you want to go, and I hope you get to go. There is just nothing like it and no way to describe it other than to say, please go, please feel it for yourself, and then decide for yourself if this feels like home.
I think that's you said the important word, home, and I think for many African Americans, this is where we live. This is where we basically have our roots. But a lot of times when we do start talking about Africa, that's the thing that so many of us will say, where is home? Where do we really come from? Like, who am I really? I don't really know who I am. I know who I've been told who I am, because that's the result of slavery. We're told who we were, but to know is something different. Which is why so many people are doing the whole DNA thing, trying to find out what part of Africa they come from.
And the reason it's such a booming business is because the curiosity is there, right? We all want to know.
Yes.
You know, I did it because I wanted to know. I knew where my father was from. You know, being Nigerian, West Africa was present in my blood. And I was curious about my mother because of the slave trade. I knew there was going to be something extra, you know, and I put quotes around extra, and not in a, you know, demeaning way or derogatory way, but because we know the stories, you know, our blood's diluted and you know, because of things that we couldn't control.
Right.
And so I was always curious about it, you know, especially, you know, growing up, you know, people would say things because my brother is darker than I am. And, you know, my sister, you know, has light brown hair. And, you know, again, I just wanted to know. And so when we did it and I found out, you know, of course I said West Africa is present in me, but then I found North Africa is in, East Africa, South Africa. Okay. I'm all over. And then there's a little bit of, you know, what shows up is Russian, Finland, and Asian. And you think, you know, there's no way I would have known that, right? My mother doesn't have those stories. She doesn't have those connections. She couldn't, and you know, it's too bad she passed away before I did this, so I was never able to share it with her.
Oh, wow.
But how exciting it would have been for her to know that these are the places that sit in her blood, in her existence. You know, look at the places that make up you.
Yeah.
And yeah, that curiosity is exactly why we should all go. And, you know, and Africa, yes, we should all go. African Americans, Caucasians, you know, just go to experience it for yourself. Yeah. Because I get told, you know, when I write a story, and I again, write what interests me. And I write about the times I spent when we would, you know, drive to villages to spend time, and anything that I experienced there, I write about it. I write about life in the city in Nigeria. I write about, you know, life in California and in Oregon as one of the only African-American people I see on a daily basis living in the Pacific Northwest. Those are all my experiences. And when I get, you know, sometimes I get feedback saying, oh, you know, we have to stop telling these stories about Africans and living in villages and African poverty and things like that. I think, you know, and I'm never confrontational because that's not me. But I think I will stop telling these stories when people no longer have to experience these lives. You know, it's almost as if, you know, there's embarrassment, when we started our meeting tonight, there's embarrassment in sharing that, you know what, life is not perfect, life is messy.
Yes.
And I hiding, and sometimes I see in movies, honestly, if I can share this really quickly, and I see in Nigerian movies, which I also enjoy, and I invite my Nigerian friends over, and we eat Nigerian food, and we watch them, and it's perfect, way to spend the day. But I see, a lot of the stories that get told now, they're cleaned up, like clean versions of what Africa is like. And I know people want to show a different side of Africa. And yes, we should definitely tell these stories. But I also think we should not make the mistake of forgetting that poverty's, in your face. You get out of the airport, you get in the car, you drive through town, you're not faced with everybody's, a gazillionaire and driving a Range Rover around. That does exist there for sure. Yeah. Not everyone's suffering, but those who are really are.
Yes, it's evident. It's up front.
It's present. It's in your face, and there's no way that you can't feel it. And and I'll say again, when I was getting married, so I'll start with when my parents split. Dad stayed in Nigeria, and Mom came back to the States with the children. And so years later, when I was getting married, Dad told my husband-to-be, he said, well, you have to come here to do it. If you want to marry my daughter, come to Nigeria to do it. And so we went back and, maybe, mimicking my mom's life in a way. I also had 2 children by the time I met my husband, my now husband. And so we took the children. They were 5 and 7 at the time. And my 7-year-old said to me, after seeing, on one of our drives through from, maybe from home to the pool or something to go enjoy our day, and a child had come up against our car and was begging for money, pointing to her mouth and begging, because that's what she did with her day, right? She went into the street and collected money to help feed and support her family. And my 7-year-old looked at me and said, she looks like she's my age. Why isn't she at school? Imagine a child seeing that. And I didn't say, but that child had a baby on her back and is out working to collect money to bring back home so they can eat. Okay. So it's again, those are the stories that I want to tell. I know that there are plenty of Nigerians enjoying life. Okay. I'm not complaining. I am comfortable at where I sit. But if I, told you every day that it was, if I told you every day was going to be sunny and you're going to have a nice, refreshing drink in hand and someone's going to be there rubbing your feet, you wouldn't believe in that kind of life. I think, facing reality that it's not always sunny. People are struggling, and we're not going to solve the world's problems with one book or 2 or with a few words here and there. But again, stepping outside of that silence is my goal. And, I know that's a long way to answer your question, but that's why I do this.
Wow. That's a powerful story.
It is.
Very powerful. And it's a story that needs to be told.
Yes.
It's a story that needs to be told because people need to see all sides of the coin, number one. So quickly, what are some of the titles of your books and how can people get them?
Yes, so my current book out now is a collection of short stories, very quick. You could relax 2 hours, 3 hours tops, 4 maybe, if you have to stop and read through it. It's called No God Like the Mother. And there's a story about, a young mother who's had baby after baby after baby and can't say to her husband, my body is tired, and continues having babies until it, costs her life. And so I try to tackle that topic. There's another story about You know, I mean, a lot of these stories came about when I lost my mom. So there's a lot of grief in here because, again, it was my way of processing my world. And, you know, there's a love story in there too. Young love happens around the world, right? Happens in Africa. And I share that too. And, you know, it's just being well received. And it, again, I'm not surprised that it's being heard. I'm surprised at how quickly it's moving through the world. Because I think if you write from your heart, right, and we're all feeling beings, we're all caring beings in the end. And when we all go to sleep at night, we're breathing in and out in the same way. And so there's no way that you can hear any of these stories and not feel, I mean, I've heard that you'll cry, but that's okay. You know, that's how your body has chosen to respond to hearing these fictional tales. But again, I think because we know that these things happen in the world, we feel for these characters. And it's, you know, available on Amazon now. It's, you know, anywhere books are sold, really. Actually, since the Oregon Book Awards nominations were announced, and I'm so grateful, right? But since it's been announced, I know that I'll get to go on a book tour. That's all through Oregon for now. Hopefully I'll be able to make my way across the country. And when I go to Nigeria this summer, I'll hopefully be able to share my work there. But right now it's feeling like the ears are open, and, you know, I'm gonna keep talking if they're listening.
Right. And that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing. I mean, and you see, just listening to you talk about the book and the stories in the book, you can visualize actually what's happening just by the way you speak about it.
Well, I hope
these are real stories. These are real stories. They may be fictionalized, but they're real.
They're real.
Situations, circumstances are correct.
If you've lost a child, you will feel it. If you've lost a parent, you know, and again, my intention was not to only write about loss, but that happened to be where I was at the time of, you know, writing these stories. And, you know, if you've ever been in love and lost someone you loved, or not known how the love was going to flourish in the world, you know, that's a different kind of loss too. But just also those experiences, what happens to the heart when we don't have control over it, is really the message here, right?
Kesha, let me ask you, because
please.
you are Yoruba.
Yes.
There are many fabulous Yoruba proverbs. Do any of those come up in your work, or better still, is there a particular proverb that would encapsulate the work that you do, your writing?
You know, I share in it. Yes, you know, and actually it's funny that you asked, because Nigerians do tend to speak in proverbs, right? And I'll tell you the title of the book itself, No God Like the Mother, you know, it came about because, you know, there's a thing. Nigerians are very religious people. You know, God is above everything else. As far as, you know, we're all concerned, you step into Nigeria, it's ever present. And I remember, you know, as a kid, you know, hearing if you saw a child disrespecting its mom, you know, someone quickly comes, you know, and I remember it happening. A woman came over and said to the child, you love God so much, but you are disrespecting your mother. Don't you know there's no God like the mother, right? No. And so, you know, it always stuck with me. You know, of course, you know, when mom leaves, I miss her. When she's back, I want nothing but to be wrapped up around, you know, in her arms, and, you know, next to her, breathing in her presence. And, you know, I loved my mother very much. And, you know, even with all her struggles, when we came back to the States, you know, you couldn't tell me a thing about my mother not being a God or godlike. even in all her mistakes. And, you know, as an adult, I stand here today more able to understand why she wasn't perfect. But you know what? I'm hoping that with this book, it comes across that, you know, the expectation on our mothers, we put some high demands on our women,
Yes,
let alone our mothers.
They are.
You know,
right.
They are our life source.
Yes.
They
And
are our life source when
absolutely.
we're growing up.
And the expectation that they have to be perfect, or, you know, this not having room for, you know, or, you know, they have to be infallible in some way, you know, breaks my heart. You know, I'm a parent, I'm a mother of 4 children, 3 daughters and 1 son. And I see now exactly what my mother went through. And it, you know, again, you know, they always say, oh, you won't know till you have kids, right? But there's nothing like experiencing being a mother, and 2 of my children are adults now, and you know, them still, they come to you and they're mad at you about something, and I just want to say, oh my goodness, this reminds me of how I was. You know,
yes, they say that you get it back through your children.
Yes. You know, and my mom used to say something. She was like, oh, you know, one day, you know, your daughter's going to make you cry like you made me cry if you don't change, or, you know, whatever. And, you know, she wasn't wrong.
Well, they never
she was
are.
not wrong. You know, we have them for a reason. You know, again, I wish I could have, you know, this book was a tribute to mothers. And some of the women in these stories weren't great mothers, but that's also to showcase, you know, the need for us to stop having these expectations that our moms, you know, couldn't be broken. You know, if you grew up with any kind of trauma, you're going to walk through life as an adult if you haven't dealt with your trauma.
Absolutely.
And so having this expectation that we're supposed to be able to shake off all our issues and smile all the time and raise perfect children and have the perfectly cleaned house and okay.
That's a myth.
Right. So anyway, that my reasons behind it. There is no God like the mother. I wouldn't say that I'm godlike in any way. I am by far not. But that's where it came from. Just hearing
beautiful.
It said, you know, you love God so much, respect your mother.
Wow.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
That is deep.
Kesha.
Eshe, yes, that's right. That's right. See,
Pupo.
Well, that's right. Thanks a lot. Right. Look at, you know, how language. Can you imagine our ancestors all those years ago when uncertainty was before them? I'm sure they, you know, no one was seeing this moment. You know,
no
one.
Not.
This is it's just, I think it's so wonderful. I've been very privileged. I'm learning Yoruba. That's why I saw your name. I heard the way you pronounce it. I said, I think she's Yoruba. But
yes. Oh, excellent.
But it's so wonderful that I've had this opportunity to learn the language. I'm still learning, far from mastering it.
Sure.
But so many people are trying to learn. If it's not Yoruba, it's one of the other African languages.
Yes.
You know, to get a connection. And it's so interesting because as you learn a language, you learn the culture. And then you begin to see where the African American culture came from.
Oh, yes.
The same attitude towards our mothers and grandmothers, that we put them on a pedestal.
Absolutely.
We did. And you didn't disrespect anybody who was older than you were.
Absolutely.
Your life was in danger.
Yes. Yeah.
So true.
That is a fact, right?
you know, and those things come from an African heritage. It was the way that what I see now amongst African people, the way that they treat the elderly.
Yes.
There is tremendous respect given to those who are older.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I was with a congregation of Yoruba speaking people, and the little children came up and touched the little boys, prostrated themselves, and the little
Yeah.
girls knelt. And then I saw younger women who were married,
Yes.
and they came up and knelt before me. I was like, what is going on?
Yes.
And it's such a wonderful thing. It's so awesome to have that kind of respect for one another.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you
And
know, I'm
again, that's one of those things that I just wish every African American could see that and realize that this is part of your heritage.
this
You were
is, you
taught
know,
this way. Your
yeah.
grandmother taught you this way. Your mother taught you. Don't you disrespect Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Don't you dare.
And again, right? And mothering wasn't limited to just the woman who birthed you. It's,
Right.
you know, your next door neighbor, it's your aunties, it's your grandmother, it's all the
right.
women in the
All the
village,
women.
right? That term, it takes a village to raise a child, didn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the respect required to, you know, to earn your spot in this world came based on how, you know, well you walk through it, and how you know, that close understanding you get that you're lucky to be here tomorrow because I let you be here, you know.
How about that?
um,
What is that
and
saying? I
you know,
brought you
once
into
you
this
understand,
world.
that's right.
Right.
You know, I'm sure, you know, if we traced it back, there's a saying somewhere, you know, that translates to I brought you into this world, I'll take you out. We
Right.
all heard it.
Everybody's heard that one.
Everyone's heard it, right? And you know, and I just want to add, sorry, really quickly, you know, what Ruth was saying, you know, I said before, my mom was young, 2 children, right? That's not the goal for anyone with a young child, to be a parent before they're ready. And you know, when she didn't have many prospects in America, you know, going to Nigeria really did elevate her in a way. I'm telling you, if you heard the story, that by the time she left, she walks into a room and people stand to greet her, you know, and you know, people still say her name, people speak about her, because she went there and was not showing up as, oh well, I am an American, you know, I went there and I'm coming back on my own volition, I'm here. She came back and said, what can you teach me? You know, and it was and that's maybe the best lesson I've ever received from her, is you can't expect that, you know, where you find someone is where they'll always be, and you don't walk into a room believing that you're better than anyone in it. And and if you do believe that, you're in the wrong room. And if you do happen to know more than someone else, why not share? And she was, that generosity and her kindness definitely contributed to the kind of person that I wanted to be in this world. You know, I'll say the slave trade wasn't the end of things. It was just an interruption, because I see in the foods we were eating in Africa and the foods African Americans make here, many similarities. That interruption, all it did was just change the flavor a little. It's all the same. You understand? And so my goal is to hopefully bring back some reminders that, yes, there was this break in our lineage, and, you know, the world is a smaller place than it used to be. But isn't it beautiful still, you know? And let's find some of that beauty. Let's celebrate each other and that beauty. And you know, if I am not here to see it come to fruition, I like to say that I at least tried.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Thank
much.
you.
It's been a really warm and awakening type of interview, and we appreciate you bringing that energy
Yeah, thank
to our
you.
audiences. So how can our audience get in touch with you and get your book again?
Yes, please. So No God Like the Mother is available on Amazon, which, is how most people try to get them these days. It's also available on Kindle. You can visit my website, KeshaAjose-Fisher.com. If you, for any information about events that any upcoming events, I know that it's also available at Barnes & Noble. If your local bookstore doesn't have it, please let them know that you're interested in it, so they will bring it in. Again, these days, it's hard to get your work noticed if you don't have a famous name or have someone famous willing to pull you up. But, I'm going to do it one day at a time.
You on
and
your way,
spread my message one day at a time.
You on your way. And that's where we all are. One day at a time.
That's right.
And all of the people that are famous and have a name, it was one day at a time for them as well.
Exactly. Yes.
So you're on the road to something great, and we encourage you to just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you for, being willing to share your evening with me. I'm sure that we will run across each other's paths one day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When that next book come out, we definitely going to be talking again.
From your lips, I'm telling you, I hope so. Again, I'll tell her story, because she didn't leave this place. She left too soon, is what I'll say. And I wish I'd had the time. We always say this when we lose someone we love. I wish I'd had the time to tell her all these things and how I felt, and all these hopes and dreams that I had for her and wish she'd accomplished. But you know what? She was young when we lost her, but that woman lived. And if I don't do anything else on this planet, I will tell her story. I will tell her story.
And people will listen.
Oh, yeah. People are listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope so.
They are.
Yes.
They are. Because just, I can't wait to get the book, because I'm feeling some kind of way just through you, and the energy that you're projecting. I definitely want to get the book.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I meet her in your pages.
Thank you. Absolutely. I will always reach out. If viewers have questions for me, if you have feedback, I always welcome it. Like I said, I have thick skin. I'm I'm going to tell stories that interest me, and I'm going to tell them my way. And they open the doors. I'm coming. I'm telling them. I'm telling all the stories.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I'm excited, and we are definitely going to have you back.
Yes,
sure.
Please. Thank you.
And we will definitely talk to you and as to how we can support you with getting your book promoted and things like that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate all of it.
Absolutely. We definitely appreciate you.
Yes, indeed.
Word on the street says there's something new at Just Minding My Business Media. You've heard our podcast, Just Minding My Business Radio, that brings news and views you can use. That airs every Thursday at 6 p.m. on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and Spreaker. Well, now you can watch Just Minding My Business. That's right, Just Minding My Business Media now has a TV presence on Raven International TV Network, broadcast on Roku, Fire, and Apple TV. Your business, through Just Minding My Business Media, has exposure on internet radio, major social media platforms, and now TV, through Just Minding My Business dynamic digital marketing platform. Don't listen to the word on the street. Hear it for yourself. Visit jmb.asistercircle.org to learn how you can take your business, your vision, to the next level.
Thank you to the amazing women of A Sister Circle Empowerment Network, ASCEN LLC,
and our media partners. Let Just Minding My Business Media promote your business. For information, visit us at jmb.assistercircle.org. That's jmb.assistaccircle.org. Voiceovers by RCH VoiceWorks, for when you want to be heard. Call 443-620-4115.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to you and yours.